Welcome in, everybody. I am Pugs Moran. This is Diddy or Didn't He, day 26 here on Radio Misfits, the podcast network for all your podcast needs. Diddy or Didn't He, we've been doing it every single day, man. I've been sitting here trying to break down all the ins and outs of the nonsense that we're hearing here. It's coming to an end. Getting very excited here. I feel like we're coming to an end. The prosecution, they've been going now for 4 weeks. Oh my God, how long is this going to take? I have no idea. Anyway, let's get into everything that happened today. Night 26, day 26. It's night now as I record this. 26 of the Diddy trial. Diddy or Didn't He? Today we heard from a former Diddy assistant, Brendan Paul, another Diddy assistant. How? Well, we know how many assistants he's got. He's got like 14, right? Isn't that? No, not 14. What was the number? He's got 2 assistants. He's got 24 hours assistants who are on call. They work 12-hour shifts. So, I don't know, whatever. Anyway, Brendan is somebody that we hadn't heard about before. And well, he came and he sat down and he told his tale of woe. Brendan, just like all the other assistants, he is testifying with immunity. Earlier, without the jury being present, he took the Fifth Amendment, which compels Judge, well, I guess it doesn't compel Judge Subramanian, but when a witness says, I'm taking the Fifth, then the judge is like, all right, I'll give you immunity. So he's testifying with immunity, just as a number of other Diddy assistants have. They're being asked to testify about things that they did during the course of their employment with Diddy that in many cases, illegal. Drugs, prostitution, that kind of thing. So we heard from Brendan Paul, and then we heard from Special Agent, Homeland Security Special Agent, Joseph, I'm going to say Chichillo. I'm going to say it's Chichillo. This is not a televised court case. I didn't hear the way other people pronounced it. I'm just going by written reports. So we're going to say Joseph Chichillo. He is a Homeland Security Special Agent. He'll testify as well. We also have a moment here, not a moment, more than a moment, a pretty good chunk of today, where the jury gets to see a breakdown of a conversation between Diddy and Cassie, and it's pretty fascinating. Illuminating is the way that when I was reading it in real time, I was like, this is illuminating. So we'll get into that. It's for me, somebody who, if you listen every day, you know that I've been really kind of shocked at how big a win this trial has been so far for the defense. They've been crushing every day. Everything the prosecution tries to do, I keep coming back to the fundamental question of, is this sex trafficking? Is anything that we're hearing here by the prosecution, by the way, this has all been the prosecution side of things so far. All of these witnesses have been brought by the prosecution to try and convince us that Sean Diddy Combs deserves to spend the rest of his life in prison. And they haven't done it. They've done an absolutely garbage job, or possibly more to the point, the defense has done an amazing job of reframing every argument that the prosecution makes so that it looks like common sense, which is, what you want to resonate with the jury with. Common sense would dictate that these women were not prisoners and that these women were just kind of in it for their own eventual fame. So there are some illuminating text messages between Cassie and Diddy that we'll get into today as well. But let's talk about a couple of things that happened before court today. It's been 2 days. We've had 2 days off. If you remember, on Wednesday, court was canceled on Wednesday because one of the jurors had called in sick. So how about that power, huh? Some just rando juror had no idea they had that kind of power. Some rando juror just when I got a cough this morning. It's a mental health day. I'm going to take a mental health day. And the entire court case was shelved for that. That's crazy. It's a crazy amount of power for some rando juror. So Wednesday, court was canceled because of the sick juror. And then on Thursday was Juneteenth, so it's a federal holiday, so court isn't in session. Judge Subramanian got to go get his water ski, got to go get his jet ski on. He's out there jumping waves. Let's see here. But before we started today, we did have a couple of things that we need to address. Judge Subramanian who, by the way, I think has been awesome with keeping everything, nice and timely and not allowing for nonsense. Today, Subramanian has said that since the start of the trial, he wants this thing to be done by July 4th. Guys, that's like next week or, like within the next 10 days, right? Or maybe 2 weeks. Whatever it is, that's really close. That's really close. And it seems like we were on pace to make that. However, that's probably not the deal. We're probably going to run past that deadline. To the best of Judge Subramanian's efforts, this juror calling in sick and then having that be the day before Juneteenth, a federal holiday, and then having a Friday session, which is always a little bit shorter than most of the others. Again, Judge Subramanian loves to get his jet ski on. Got to get out there on the lake for the weekend. We're behind now. We are behind. We were right on schedule, if not a little bit ahead of schedule. We're actually behind now. Prosecutors were expected to rest their case today, but no. But with Wednesday's delay, they likely won't rest until sometime Monday. The defense has said that they expect to use between 2 and 5 trial days to make their case, and closing arguments will take additional time. All of those steps need to happen before the jury begins deliberating, which makes for a tight schedule for aiming for a 4th of July verdict. No way. No way. And I'll tell you, I don't want to rest. I don't want it to go to the jury 2 days before the 4th of July. I mean, if I'm Diddy, I don't. Again, these people might be just like Judge Aram Subramanian, a jet ski fan. They might want to get out of there and wrap this thing up, not do the due diligence required of a trial of this magnitude. So yeah, so let's not give it to the jury until after 4th of July. Let's let the jury go have their 4th of July. So they're not rushing, let's get this over with. I got plans. Come on. Let's see. So I'm thinking it'll probably be the week after everything. One day, one juror calls in sick, and all of a sudden the trial is derailed by a week. All right, let's talk about Brendan Paul. He's the assistant to Diddy, who was testifying today with immunity. It says here, Brendan Paul, he's got immunity. He's being examined by prosecutor Christy Slavic. AUSA Christy Slavic there. I don't think we've heard from Christy before. Okay, welcome to the party, Christy. Move over, Emily. Brendan Paul said that he worked as an assistant to Diddy from late 2022 and stopped when he was arrested on March 25th, 2024 at Miami Airport. He got busted for coke. He had coke in a bag and he was flying on a plane. More on that to come. So that's Brendan Paul's length of tenure with Diddy Worldwide. It was late 2022 until mid-March or March of 2024. Let's see here. Regarding the coke bust, which I told you a little bit about there, we'll get more details later. He said he was on his way to a family vacation with Diddy when he was arrested for possession of cocaine. All right, again, put a flag in that. We'll get to that later. Let's see. He's quoted here. It says, "It was in my Goyard bag." Goyard bag? Goyard. Maybe some of you more sophisticated types will know what that is. "It was in my Goyard bag for personal assistant duties," he said. Paul said he was sweeping Combs' room and grabbed some cocaine to put it somewhere else, but he forgot to remove it from his own bag before leaving for the trip. So, all right, whatever. We'll get into it now. I think we're going to touch on it again later. But okay, so here's what happened. So he's Diddy's assistant. Diddy's going on a family vacation. He's on a private plane. They're flying private. He's the assistant. He's with Diddy on the private plane. He says that he was cleaning up after Diddy earlier, and he grabbed some coke that was left out, and he just stuck it in his pocket, and it ended up in his bag. He didn't even think about it. I think this dude thought he got some free coke. I think that he thinks like, yeah, a little free coke for me. They'll never miss it. They just left it behind. But he's saying, it's flying private. He's with Diddy. He's got a little coke in his bag. So they land, the private jet lands. They get to the fancy private jet airport or part of the airport where all the fancy rich people with their private jets go. And he gets out, and the cops are like, hey, can we check the bag? And the cops are like, is everything in this bag yours? And Brendan Paul's like, it sure is. And they're like, even this Coke? So that's when he got arrested. Paul said he divided assistant duties with Diddy's other assistants. Paul testified that he helped handle Diddy's travel logistics and packing, and helped Combs with his fitness workouts, meal plans, and music-related needs. Paul also said that he would pack weed joints in Combs' garage. What does that mean? Pack weed joints in Combs' garage? Was he rolling joints? Is he a joint roller? Snoop Dogg. Snoop Dogg's got a full-time joint roller. Apparently he pays. The story with Snoop Dogg's joint roller is hysterical because that's really not. Look, man. Okay, so I know about weed. That's not like something that you should make like $300,000 a year to do. But here's the story as I understand it. So there was this dude that was a buddy of Snoop Dogg's, and Snoop said he rolled the best joints. And then when Snoop got rich, he decided that he was going to make him his full-time joint roller. And he paid him like a good amount of a good working man's wage, 80, 100 grand, something like that, whatever. He's Snoop Dogg's full-time joint roller. Look, that's great money if that's your only job. Plus, I got to imagine free weed. And if you're a really good joint roller, I bet you're good at weed. But apparently, like a bidding war between other hip-hop dudes. So like another hip-hop, I don't know who it was, but another hip-hop, like let's just say Kendrick Lamar. I don't know. Kendrick's like, hey, dude, I'll pay you $200,000 if you come be my job. So this guy did. Anyway, point is, he's paid a lot of money. He still works with Snoop, but it's funny because other people come every once in a while, and it's like a status thing to have this joint. I don't know, man. I don't know what these kids are getting into. Let's get back to the story at hand. Okay, so we've got Brendan Paul, who is, by the way, he's a doughy white boy who claims that he played walk-on basketball at Syracuse. I don't know. I don't know about that. Anyway, Diddy had him rolling joints in his garage. That was part of his job. It says here, Paul said he typically worked between 80 and 100 hours a week. He said he would usually work between 4 to 6 days a week, but he was always on call. His salary, this is the fun part. I like to know how much these guys make. It seems about it on par with the others. His salary was $75K a year, and that he later had it raised up to $100,000. That seems to be, that's good. That seems to be standard for Diddy worldwide. When you're a new personal assistant, yeah, it seems like $75K is the entry level. But then they all claim like, yeah, I was up to $100,000. And this dude, if he went from 75 up to $100,000, it only worked for him less than a year and a half. That's pretty good. There are advancement opportunities in Diddy worldwide, is my point. Paul testified that he took prescription Adderall. Hold on, is this what is it? Paul testified that he took prescription Adderall and the quote rare use of cocaine to help him stay awake and alert during his employment. He said he also smoked weed during his employment. Weed. It's like, I also breathe air. In that world, it seems like, weed isn't really a thing. It's like weed is like, it's like wine to trophy wives. It's not a thing. That's what? I'm not drunk. It's just wine. Paul testified that he took Adderall and on rare occasion cocaine, but he did smoke weed. He talks about being fired. Brendan Paul testified that his mission was to make sure that Sean Diddy Combs was always happy. He said that Combs told his assistants they should operate like SEAL Team 6. Paul said that Diddy fired him 2 or 3 times, and he testified about one incident that sticks out in his memory. All right, now I want to tell you this incident, as testified to by Brendan Paul, Diddy's former assistant. But I want to remind you that he is an instrument in this. At this point in the trial, he is an instrument of the prosecution. He's been called as a witness by the prosecution to make their case that Diddy's terrible. So here is Brendan Paul telling the story of one of the times that Diddy fired him. Okay, here you go. It was in late October or early November of 2023, Paul testified that he forgot Diddy's Lululemon fanny pack when he wanted to go for a walk. So Diddy wanted to go for a walk. And God damn it, how gangsta that is. Where's my goddamn Lululemon fanny pack? Get back to rolling joints, doughy white boy. Nobody believes you walked down at Syracuse. Paul recalled. All right, let me start again. Let's do this again. In late October, early November 23, Paul testified that he forgot Combs' Lululemon fanny pack when he wanted to go for a walk. That's when Combs told Paul, "I don't want to see your face," and call KK and tell her you're fired. Woo, Diddy. All right. Remember, instrument of the prosecution. Paul's talking about, I got fired a couple of times. Here's one of the times I got fired. And he tells that he's like Diddy's raging. He's an infant. He's an emotional infant, is what we've seen time and time again from Sean Diddy Combs. He's an emotional infant who lives an Elvis-like life. Everybody says yes to, you know what I mean? It's just, anyway. So he's like, "You forgot my Lululemon fanny pack. You're fired, and call KK and tell her I said so," whatever. Okay, so he's fired. So Paul feels pretty bad because Diddy's pissed, probably pissed about something else. Paul recalled that Combs' former chief of staff, Christina Karam, told him, because remember, Paul was told to call Christina and say you're fired. Paul recalled that Combs' former chief of staff, KK, told him to lay low. Soon after, she sent Paul to set up Combs' London hotel room around Combs' birthday that year. Combs never discussed the incident with him again. All right, so here's why I wanted to sort of stop on this little incident. Because again, instrument of the prosecution, this is supposed to be a bad story about Diddy. But let me tell you how I would process this story as a member of the jury. I would process it as, Diddy's cool. Diddy's fine. He just rages and he fires people, but he doesn't really fire you, and you don't have to go anywhere. It's not he's an emotional infant, okay? That's not the same thing as a guy who deserves to spend the rest of his life in prison for sex trafficking and all these global crimes. It's not. He's a rock star. Well, rap star, I know the difference, but I'm just throwing that out generally. He's of that mentality. Well, you're fired, off with your head, but he don't really mean it. You don't really mean it. And thankfully, and let me tell you, this is something that I have learned throughout the course of this trial. Thankfully, KK was there. Christina Karam, can we take a minute? One takeaway from this entire trial is that Diddy had a baller of a chief of staff. He had KK seems like she handles everything. She handles all the nonsense. Diddy's like, KK, get it handled. She is amazing. We should all have a KK in our life. So Paul calls KK. He says, he fired me. And she's like, oh, no, he didn't. Just take a couple of days off. And then he gets sent to London to set up a hotel for some freak off. Paul also said from the stand that being fired wasn't a thing. I would talk to human resources about issues all the time, he said. He also said if anyone had an issue, they just went to KK. All right. So he's like, it's not a thing. Yeah, I was fired. So the prosecution is getting him to tell the story about being fired. They want this to resonate with the jury as, look at what a tyrant he is. But instead, I'm telling you, it came off like, oh, Diddy's silly. Just, nobody takes him seriously. He's going to fire you. But that's not scary. That's take the remote control away from grandpa kind of situation, right? Whatever. Just let him be mad. So Paul said it wasn't a thing to talk to human resources about anything. And if anybody ever had an issue, they would just go to KK. All right. Now they started talking about drugs because it really did seem that Brendan Paul, Diddy's assistant, a large part of his responsibilities were acquiring and making sure that Diddy always had drugs when he wanted them. The jury saw some pictures. They saw a photo of Paul that Paul took, some pictures of ecstasy, ketamine, and Molly that was dyed pink for the aesthetic. Paul testified that he would buy marijuana about every 2 months. paying $4,200 for 16 ounces. Okay. All right. He's paying. All right. Every 2 months. So every 2 months, he's buying an ounce of weed. That's personal use. Every 2 months, an ounce of weed. Every 2 months, an ounce of weed. How much is this? Okay, that's going to be like $65 for a quarter. So a quarter should last you a week. I don't know. I'm out. I don't know. I'm trying to do pot math in my head, and I'm getting lost. Anyway, that's not an absurd amount of weed. That ain't Snoop Dogg amounts of weed. Quite frankly, that's 55-year-old lawyer amount of weed. That's 55-year-old stockbroker amount of weed. That's not a crazy amount of weed to be buying. So, okay, very good. Paul said that he bought other drugs as well for Combs, fewer than 10 times, however. Testified that he would sometimes pay between $300 and $500 for 1 to 2 grams of drugs. What does that mean? 1 to 2 grams of drugs. What are you buying? Coffee? What are you buying? Raw, ungranulated sugar? That's a drug. What? Drugs. Sounds like something your mom would say. Are you on the drugs? I don't want to raise a child that smokes the pot. Paul said he bought other drugs, less than 10 times, and he would pay about $300 to $500 for 1 to 2 grams of drugs. And other times, he would pick up packages without having to pay anything. On some occasions, Paul texted a drug dealer, and they would come to Combs' home to deliver the drugs. Yeah, that would be the way I would do it. I would do it that way. Because, see, if I'm Diddy's assistant and Diddy's like, go get all my drugs. If I got to go pick up, I don't want to be driving around with, 16 ounces of weed. Although, wait a second. If this is California, it's legal, so there's no problem. And it doesn't matter. I don't want to drive around. I don't want to do it. I'll just have the drug dealer come to me. If Diddy's cool with it, I'm sure the drug dealer will be like, yeah, man, I got to go to Diddy's house, drop off a package. And then they're like, you know Diddy? And he's like, yeah, I know Diddy. So, and then you don't have to drive around as the assistant. If weed comes to you. That's very nice. That's very nice. All right. Paul said he bought other drugs. The jury saw messages between Paul and a drug dealer. The drug dealer says in the message, is it for you or Puff? So you reach out to a drug dealer, you're like, I need the drugs. And they're like, is it drugs for you or Puff? I'd be like, what the fuck difference does that make, dude? You know me through Puff. You know me through Puff. That's this whole thing. What are you going to say? Are you saying you charge me more? You charge what? I hope if it's for you, I'll charge you a little less. But if it's for Puff, that big dummy, he's a billionaire. We just charge him whatever and he pays it. Is it for you or Puff? The drug dealer asked. Puff, Paul responded. Let's see here. And then he added, but please don't disclose that. You can tell whoever that it's for me. Yeah, don't disclose that. You wouldn't want anybody thinking Puff Daddy smokes weed. A guy who goes around as Puff, he's in hip hop. Come on. And by the way, isn't it legal? Like, when did it become legal in California? Maybe they're not in California. You're right. I don't know. I see context. I need more context to really riff on this. Paul said once he received drugs, he'd give them directly to Diddy, or he'd put them in the Gucci pouch where drugs were stored. Paul testified that he would pick up prescription drugs for Combs at pharmacies under Combs' real name or the alias Frank Black. Okay. So once again, that's just like, so he gets a rash, right? So he gets a real prescription. And part of Brendan's job was to not only get illicit drugs, but to also do, normal. That he's a 55-year-old man. He might be on blood pressure medication. He's probably got regular drugs. But this is what I don't understand. So I get how Diddy could get real prescriptions in the name of Sean Combs, but Frank Black, that's not his real name. You can get prescriptions in a fake name at a pharmacy? Because remember, he's saying, I would go to a pharmacy and what's this? Hey, feds, do we need to open up another case about some doctor in California that's writing fake names? The jury also saw messages from that Combs sent to Paul in February, 14th of February. Hey, that's Valentine's Day. asking him to get Xanax. So on Valentine's Day, 2024, Diddy personally texted Paul, get some Xanax. Paul testified that Combs didn't have a prescription for Xanax, and thus they weren't able to obtain the drugs. Yeah, they said that on what? They said this dude's got immunity already, but I'm telling you, these people that the prosecution think are going to be these deadly weapons against Diddy, they all seem to like the dudes. All these assistants, they're like, oh, it's crazy. But, he was kind of cool. He was kind of fun. I learned a lot. He was nice. He wasn't bad. He was, kind of a jerk because he's Diddy. But he was actually kind of nice. That's what the jury has been hearing over and over again, that all these people that work for him, they're like, oh, it was nuts. I could tell you stories. But what do you think of Diddy? Oh, he's cool. No, I like Diddy. This is just not painting the picture I expected. He's weird. He's sexy weird, like he's into he's got some peccadillos, as they say, that are not mainstream. No, not at all. But hey, man, I'm one of them dudes that I don't care what you do to get off. I don't care. I'm also one of these dudes that's like, just don't do it around me. I don't care. You get off in a weird way. You want to do it around me? I'll watch. If I don't like it, I'll leave. See, that's how I live my life. Jury saw messages from February 14th, Valentine's Day, where Diddy asked Paul to get him Xanax. And then Paul testified right there in trial. He said, he asked me to get Xanax, but Your Honor, he didn't have a prescription for that. So that would be illegal. So, just putting it out there. See, we are law abiding. All right, let's talk a little bit about, what are we calling them? Debaucheries? Freak-offs? Freak-offs is the one that's stuck, because freak-offs are what we first heard these events called. And for like a year before the trial, it was all about, we're going to hear about freak-offs. Well, since the trial started, we've learned that Diddy has a whole bunch, there were a whole bunch of different names for these, that it wasn't just a freak-off, just like Diddy's own name. He is constantly changing it. We've heard freak-offs. We've heard hotel nights. We've heard debauchery. We've heard wild nights. And we've heard king nights. Well, guess what? Paul, during Paul's tenure with Diddy, he called them Wild King Nights. There's a new one. Wild King Nights. Paul said that he only recalled Jane participating in Wild King Nights with Combs during his tenure with him. So Paul got on the stand. He's talking now about Jane. We heard from Jane for like 6 days. So Paul is on the stand and he's talking about these Wild King Nights. I think Jane actually called them hotel nights. Jane referred to them as hotel nights on the stand, and now he's calling them Wild King Nights. All right, but we're talking about the same events that were already described. So Paul said that he only recalls Jane, like he didn't know any other girls. And this it's kind of what we're learning. Like the original freak-off girl, when Diddy first started doing this with his girlfriends, the original freak-off girl was Cassie, and then Cassie left. And I don't know what there was missing in between, but then Jane came in. So it's not like there's dozens and dozens of women that Diddy has done this with. It does seem to be, for lack of a better word, a part of the way he gets intimate with you. I mean, if he actually cares about you, it seems like he puts you through a freak-off, which is so weird. So weird. So, okay. So Paul said that he only recalled Jane participating in King Nights. Paul testified that his understanding of Wild King Nights were to include partying, alcohol, sex, drugs. The nights were at hotels during the beginning of his time with Combs, but Paul testified that Combs stopped holding them at hotels after the Cassie lawsuit. So after the hotel video came out and after Cassie, in the wake of that, decided that she was going to, bring these charges, Diddy kept having hotel nights. He just stopped having them. He started having them at private residences. And I believe we heard one that occurred at Jane's home, right? Didn't we hear about one? I think so. We'd have to go back and check the notes. Paul testified that his understanding of the Wild King Nights were parties that include alcohol, sex, drugs. The nights were at hotels, but then once Cassie brought charges, or brought suit, I should say, Diddy stopped having them at hotels. The jury saw an iPhone note that was a schedule for February 2023 that Paul said KK, remember his chief of staff, KK, that Paul said KK created. The schedule for February 23 was the first time around Jane's visit to Miami to see Combs for her birthday. This is all important, all right? We're going to try and break this down properly. Jane spoke extensively about her birthday trip to Miami, where she did not want to participate in the freak-off, and she had conversations with him beforehand via text about not wanting to participate in the freak-off. She gets down to Miami. They have this terrible fight. Remember the whole fight, and she punches him first, but anyway. She runs away. She comes back. Remember this night? We talked about this exhausting birthday night where at the end of it, he made her have a freak off anyway. Okay, so we heard these stories. We heard from Jane's point of view that she was expecting this to be a birthday sort of thing. She was going down there and she told him explicitly she did not want to have the freak off. And he's like, okay, that's cool, or whatever, it's your birthday, whatever. So that's what we've already heard and testified to. So now what we're going is behind the scenes, behind Diddy Worldwide. At this very same time, what was Diddy's staff thinking was going to happen in Miami? Well, Paul's sitting on the stand today, Brandon Paul. He's sitting on the stand today saying, oh, no, we all knew it was going to be a freak off. Yeah, it doesn't matter what she was thinking. She thought it wasn't. And Diddy was like, yeah, baby, don't worry. It's not going to be. But no, behind the scenes, we're like, yeah, it's going to be a freak off. He's going to get her to change her mind. Paul said that he only recalled Jane participating. He also said that, I'm going to jump ahead here. The jury saw the note, the iPhone note, that was a schedule that Paul said Christina Karam, KK, created. The schedule was around the time of Jane's trip to Miami that she testified to. All right, so the schedule says, here's what the schedule says. Remember, Jane's going to Miami. It's going to be my birthday. I'm not doing a freak off. Here's what the schedule says. Be ready for a Wild King night at the hotel, and most likely Wild King Day continued at the hotel. So they were setting up for a King night regardless of what Jane thought the situation was. Jane testified that she thought that when she told Diddy she didn't want to do it and Diddy was cool with it, she thought that was that and everything was fine. No, Diddy was like, yeah, baby, that's cool. And then he hangs up with Jane and he picks up the phone and he's like, oh, this is going to be a rough one. Let's move forward with the plan. We're still doing it. But so that's what we're seeing was going on here. Paul said he often obtained supplies through Combs' property manager. These are freak-off supplies. Paul said he often obtained supplies through Combs' property managers. He said if he paid for supplies with his personal credit card, he was reimbursed through Combs' financial personnel. Brandon Paul said he once provided Combs with $5,000 cash before a Wild King night. And he said he got the cash from security. He testified that another assistant told him he once left cash in an envelope. I don't know what this is all about. Okay, cash. We know. Paul said Combs would sometimes contact him during a Wild King night. Combs would reach out via audio message or FaceTime. Imagine getting a FaceTime from Diddy while he's like, you're FaceTiming with Diddy mid-freak off. Diddy's jerking it in the corner while he's talking to you about, hey, man, I'm going to need some more corn chips. Can we get more chips up here? All right. That was it. That was it for Brian Steele as far as the prosecution, or not Brian Steele, from Brandon Paul. Brian Steele comes up next. Brian Steele is, of course, one of Diddy's defense attorneys. It's time to cross-examine Brandon Paul. Paul confirmed that handling drugs was a minor part of the work that he did for Combs. Brian Steele asked, you are not some drug mule, right? Absolutely not, Paul responded. Paul said that he believed the drugs he obtained were just for Combs' personal use. Brian Steele asked if Paul thought Wild King nights were also personal for Combs. Okay, so let's talk about what's happening here. What is Brian Steele trying to do? Right now, Brian Steele is trying to establish that none of these activities had anything to do with Diddy's corporate standing. None of this had anything to do with Diddy Worldwide or his company or Bad Boy Entertainment or anything. This was all Brian Steele is right now trying to get established here in court in front of the jury that these things were personal, that these were just Diddy in his spare time. So if you're trying to wrap him up in some kind of like a corporate fraud or anything, stop it. So that this understanding, that's what Brian Steele is trying to establish here. Paul confirmed that handling drugs was a minor part of his work for Combs and that he believed that the drugs were for Diddy's personal use. Right? Okay. Paul said that he believed the drugs he obtained were just for Combs' personal use. Steele then asked if Paul thought the Wild King nights were also just personal for Diddy. To which Paul replied, I considered those to be like an escape for him. Paul testified, confirming that he believed it was Combs' personal time to be alone with Jane. Paul testified that he often spoke with Jane. All right, now this is in the moment during the freak-offs. Paul and Jane, they know each other. Jane talked about how awful it all was, while also, still receiving $10,000 a month from Diddy and a free house and all this stuff. Paul testified that he often spoke with Jane. One of, it says here, before a Wild King night and almost every time after a King night. Paul confirmed that he never saw anything that made him think that she was hesitant or not a willing participant. She was down. We've heard this from a number of people, when asked directly about, so what was Cassie like, just in the moments or in the hours after a freak off? She was fine. She seemed like she was fine. Remember who was it? The big giant sex horse. The first one with Jules. Is it Jules the sex horse? There's a number of sex horses. These are the escorts that Diddy would hire to have sex with his girlfriends. One of them says that they never even saw, the girl do drugs and that she was totally into it. And so now here we have this again. Paul testified that he often spoke with Jane after King nights. He confirmed that he never saw anything that made him think that she was hesitant or not a willing participant. I'm sure the prosecution would have loved for him to say, oh, she was always so exhausted and she was just never in a good mood. No, that's not what the jury heard. The jury heard she was fine after this traumatic experience that you want to put Diddy in jail for life for. I mean, these are all gross, and debauched behavior, degenerate behavior, really. I don't know. I'm trying to think if I was like Diddy and a billionaire, would I get down sexually like this? I don't think I would. I don't think I would. I don't think I'd be weird. I think you're a freak or you're not a freak. And I guess I'm not a freak. All right. During cross-examination, defense attorney Brian Steele asked former Combs assistant Brendan Paul about his arrest in March of 2024. So we're going to get back into the cocaine arrest. Remember, Diddy was going on a family vacation. Excuse me. Diddy was going on a family vacation. Brendan Paul, his assistant, was going with him. They were on a private jet, Diddy's private jet. When that jet landed at the vacation place, the police took Brandon Paul's bag and said, is everything in here yours? And Brandon Paul was like, yeah. And they're like, what about this Coke? So they found Coke in his bag. Brandon Paul says he didn't know the Coke was in the bag. Brandon Paul said that the reason the Coke was in the bag was because it wasn't even his. He was just cleaning up at Diddy's and he put that in his pocket and he ended up, that's how it happened, right? He forgot about it. He was like, I didn't even think anything about it. So mistake, whatever. Okay. It says here, Assistant Brendan Paul talked about his arrest. Paul confirmed his arrest was for a very small amount of cocaine that was for Combs' personal use, that Paul himself had accidentally left in his travel bag. Neither Combs nor Chief of Staff, KK, Christina Karam, asked him to travel with the cocaine. to Combs for all the experiences that he received working for him. To which Paul responded, I guess, what do you mean by indebted? Steele asked if Paul had learned much from Combs, and Paul confirmed that he had. Steele then asked him if he had good experiences working for Combs, to which Paul responded, for the most part, yeah. Which, I take my favorite job I've ever had. Was everything about it great? No, some of it sucked. But, if someone asked me, did you have good experiences working at Live 105.3? And I'd be like, yeah, for the most part, yeah. Yeah, for the most part. So there you go. This is not a terrible story of another guy who's got an axe to grind against a bullshit, angry boss. No, he's like, yeah, it was good. I learned a lot. Let's see here. What else do we have? On redirect. Oh, we got redirect. Okay. Christy Slavic from the AUSA department there, the assistant U.S. attorney. She's going to take the reins now because she needs to try and fix some of the things that Brian Steele just did during his cross-examination. So now we got redirect with U.S. Attorney Christy Slavic. She asked Brendan Paul what he believed was taking place during, quote, Wild King Nights. Paul responded, well, there was sex happening and partying. Paul confirmed that he was not present in the hotel room, so he didn't know definitively anything illegitimate that was happening. Sitting here today, how do you feel about Mr. Combs? Slavic asked. Remember, this is redirect from the prosecution. So she's looking for something meaty, to which Paul responded, it's complicated. Gave her nothing. Look, I guess it's complicated is better than saying, he's a good dude. But I think what she wanted was, she was like, oh, he's a bad guy. They were looking for something like that. But instead they got, it's complicated. Assistant U.S. Attorney Emily Johnson now steps forward and does a little text show for the jury. This is the meat of today's show. I want to get into this. This is illuminating is the word that I'm using. Emily Johnson shows the jury text messages between Diddy and Cassie from March 12th through March 14th, 2017. Combs sent Cassie a hotel room number and then told her to call him. Hours later, Ventura texted him, what the fuck? Really? I think it'll always be black and white. You threw out all of my shit. So, okay, again, without context, we don't know what the hell that means, right? So this is Cassie responding to Diddy. Diddy just sends her a hotel room number, to which Cassie responds, what the fuck, really? I think it'll always be black and white. You threw out all of my shit. Don't know what that's about. In later messages, Cassie said, you bust my head. You bust my head in. You bust my head in, she says to him. To which Diddy responds, you crazy. Let's stop talking. You dead wrong. Flipping on me for what? Diddy says. So again, this is March 12th through 14th of 2017. I have no idea what the context here is, but I say it's illuminating because it gives you some examples of how these two interacted. We are now seeing in the moment how she was able to push back on him, how she was able to say no. Again, these are very important. And I know some of you might be thinking, well, Pugs, he's an asshole. Yeah, okay, of course. He does. He seems like an asshole. Of course he does. He seems like a bad boyfriend, which is why she should have broken up with him years ago instead of staying there hoping that he would make her a star. So that's why I say these text messages are illuminating, and there's more, and we'll get into them. Here we go. You bust my head in, she says. You crazy. Let's stop talking. You dead wrong. Flipping on me. For what? That was Diddy. Cassie says, ain't flipping. I can come back so we can talk, but I fight. She's saying that to him. She's texting him. She's like, you know what, boyfriend, I'm done with you right now. Which is, again, agency. She has rank in the relationship, and she is able. He doesn't say, bitch, here's the hotel room, and she's like, be right there, daddy. No, she's like, you're my boyfriend. You're being an asshole. Let's stop talking. You dead wrong. Flipping on me for what? Cassie responds, I ain't flipping. I can come back so we can talk, but you know I fight. You know, she's saying, I'm in a pissy mood. Let's go, Dick. That's what she's saying to him here. In later messages, Combs said, so we're clear this time. This is Combs speaking. This is Combs speaking. He sends this text to Cassie. So we're clear this time. We're taking a break. That's Diddy. That's a breakup. That's Diddy saying, so we're clear. We're taking a break. Okay, he sends that to her. Now, if you were her and you were trying to get the world to believe that you were being coerced and you didn't have any free will and, all of these, you were drugged and he was doing all these terrible things to you, all of these things that led the prosecution to create this gigantic sex trafficking case. Excuse me. If that's who you were, you're being given here and out. He's saying you can go free. We're okay. Go. We're done. So we're clear this time. We're taking a break. This is how you want to leave it. Are you sure? He then sends. She responds, instead of going, yeah, you beat the crap out of me and you make me do sex with strangers and you give me drugs and all and you beat me up. Instead of saying that, what she responds to that is, no, I just don't want to be beat down for being defiant or ever. You treat me and make me feel like I don't matter. Well, my heart breaks for her. It really does. So break up with him. This is the bottom line of this whole case. Break up with him. He's like, baby, we're on a break. We're done, right? Let's get out. We're done. Just so you know, let's make it official. We're on a break. Right? You agree with this? And she texts back, no, I just want you to stop beating me. Well, wouldn't that be nice? He's not going to stop beating you. So I guess you got to be on a break. I guess you got to break up with him. No, I just don't want to be beat down for being defiant or ever, Ventura responded. You treat me and make me feel like I don't matter. To which Combs responded, you started all of this. Apparently this text fight, she started it. You started all of this. I mean, as a guy, I've been there. But also, I know that I've been the jerk in relationships before as well. You started all of this, Combs responds. Ventura texts back, I guess I'm not down with abuse. It doesn't make sense to me. Well, of course not. It's a terrible thing. Why are you participating in it then? A dude hits you, he's gone, right? I mean, I don't. And I know that's me. That's out of some position of privilege that I have as a white male in modern American society that I'm able to just say it's that cut and dry. It's more complicated. Women try to save the relationship. I don't get it. I don't get it. If a dude if my friend punched me in the face, he wouldn't be my friend anymore. Why are we friends anymore? Because you punched me in the face, motherfucker. What? I don't get it. I don't get it. Maybe I'm just not violent enough for this world. Maybe there are just people out there who are willing to throw hands all the time. I haven't thrown hands on the regular since I'm 18, 19 years old. I'm a grown-ass man. No, I just don't want to be beat down for being defiant. You treat me and make me feel like I don't matter. You started all of this, Diddy says. I guess I'm just not down with abuse. It doesn't make sense to me, Ventura texts. And then she later wrote, you hit me in my head 2 good times. That didn't make me feel good. I know I'm not crazy. I'm hurt. Oh, wait a second. Okay, no, that's her. Okay, so this is Cassie. You hit me in my head 2 good times. That didn't make me feel good. I know I'm not crazy. To which Diddy responds, I'm hurt. You have disrespected so much in the last 12 months. You man-child. She's talking about you beating her up and you're going with the whole, you disrespected me. Oh, my God. I'm hurt. This is Diddy. She hurt Diddy. I'm hurt. These people are so fucked up. I'm telling you, these are the black Pam and Tommy. I thought Pam and Tommy were like the worst example of a couple I've ever seen. couple of big dummies, just, I love you, just a couple of morons. No, it might be these two. It might be Cassie and Diddy. Cassie and Diddy, they're the, oh, is Cassie black? Cassie's not black. I don't know if Cassie's black. I know my grandpa would say she ain't white. I don't know what Cassie is. Anyway, let's get back into it. She later wrote, you hit me in my head 2 good times. That didn't make me feel good. I know I'm not crazy. To which Diddy responds, I'm hurt. You have disrespected so much in the last 12 months. Wow. Oh, to which Cassie responded to that. All right, all right, I'll give you this whole rundown again. All right. Diddy, we'll start from here. Diddy. So we're clear this time. We're taking a break. This is really how you want to leave this. Cassie. No, I just don't want to be beat down for being defiant or ever. You treat me and make me feel like I don't matter. Diddy. You started this. Cassie. I guess I'm not down with abuse. It doesn't make sense to me. You hit me in my head 2 good times. That didn't make me feel good. I know I'm not crazy. Diddy. I'm hurt. You have disrespected so much in the last 12 months. Cassie. Wow. You think you talking to on one of your fuckboys? You can have you with that shit. I'm not talking no more. Yeah, I know. You probably heard me say that, and you're like, what the fuck did Pugs just say? That's how it's written, okay? Once again, she's mad. Cassie's mad. She's raging. After Diddy sent back, I'm hurt. You have disrespected me for 12 months. That triggered her. And she responded in just like some probably all caps, just gibberish. Here's how she responded. Wow. No comma. Just, wow, you think you talking to on of your little F boys. They can have you with that shit. I'm not taking no more. All right. So here's what I think she's trying to say. Let me try and clean this up. Wow. You think you're talking to one of your little fuck boys? They can have you with this shit. I'm not taking no more. Look at that. I think I cleaned it up. I think that's what she meant. There you go. Cassie. Later in the conversation, Combs asked Ventura if she had ever gotten numbers for female escorts. Ventura texted Combs on my... Ventura responded, excuse me, you're at a point in your life where you want to party and have a good time. And I have to focus or I'll never become anything. Cassie also wrote, I had so much fun in Miami. Then I realized I opened the door to that being my sole purpose in seeing you. I knew if I said no, she's talking about freak-offs. I knew if I said no to it in New York, it would have been a problem. You treat me like a hooker, to be honest. You always want to call one. He always wants to call a hooker, I guess. You always want to call one, and you have one. Me, this hooker has been here for 10 years, she said to him. Combs responds, wow. Wow. He had no response to that. All right, let's go back a little bit here because I think there was something important. She is talking about, all right, again, Ventura texted Combs, you're at a point, she's talking to Diddy, you're at a point in your life where you want to party and have a good time, and I've got to focus or I'll never become anything. Remember, she's a climber. Remember, I told you from the whole time. She's putting up with this because she believes that Diddy can fast track her career. Which he can. He absolutely can. He's a kingmaker. So, this is her ulterior motive. This is the choice that she made. To be in this tumultuous and obviously violent and absurdly funny relationship with this man because she believes there will be a payoff and that will be her career that she needs to be focused on now. And this is an example of her telling him, come on, man, I'm not just here to fuck you. I'm here to be, the next Paula Abdul. I don't know what she was trying to be. I don't know. You're at a point in your life where you want to party and have a good time. I have to focus or I'll never become anything. She also wrote, I had so much fun in Miami that I realized I opened the door to that being my whole purpose. I knew if I said no to you in New York, it would have been a problem. You treat me like a hooker, to be honest. You always want to call one, and yet you have one. This hooker has been here over 10 years. Combs responds, wow. And then adds, please don't play victim. If you can go to our last messages, that's all you wanted. And that's why I was upset. Ventura then wrote, and this is really interesting. This is one of the biggest moments in the trial so far. And it came during a flurry of text messages. And I think this is the most important text message that I've heard in a couple of days. Cassie responded to Diddy, quote, I love our freak offs when we both want it. Which I guess, you know, if you're the defense, you'd really love that to just be, I love our freak offs, because that would show compliance. That would show willingness. That would show somebody who's, she said, Your Honor, she says she loves it. Yeah, she tags it there with when we both want it, which complicates it. But I'm telling you, I think that is a really big text message. And of course, it was shown to the jury by the defense. It was them. Let's see here. Please don't. Ventura said in part, okay. Ventura then said, you get fucked up. You drag me down the hall by my hair. I'm 30 years old. This isn't play anymore. She also said, I was scared of your rage. I talk out of line sometimes, and I do apologize. But that doesn't mean I don't love you, and love shouldn't equate to what you do to me. Then she goes on to say, physicalities take it somewhere else. Boris had to tackle you, Puff. That's not love. That's possession. I have bleeding cuts. I like her use of physicalities here. Physicalities take it somewhere else. I would have said violence. Violence takes it somewhere else. But who's Boris? We don't know Boris. And what is this in context of? Boris had to tackle you, Puff? That's not love. That's possession. What is the Boris tackling Diddy story? I want to hear about that. Boris sounds like one of his big security guards, right? Combs told Ventura that she was unappreciative for a night that he had planned for her and said, I'm not going to let someone shit on me when all I've done is be nice. He also wrote, any other woman in the world would have been so happy. And you're whack for not keeping it real when I and everyone knows you were acting like a bitch. Again, we don't know what this is in reference to or what they were talking about. All we're being shown here are examples of their relationship. A relationship that I keep pointing out, none of these girls seem to be hostages in. He wrote, any other woman in the world would have been so happy, and you're whack for not keeping it real when I and everyone else knows you were acting like a bitch, Combs told Ventura. You need to ask someone how you were acting. He then said, talk to your people. They'll tell you, or they won't. Because all they do is suck up to you. KK, talk to her. She'll tell you the truth. Isn't this interesting? So in all of this, Ventura's got people. Cassie Ventura has people. We know Diddy's got like dozens of personal assistants. He's got KK, the chief of staff, and he's got D-Dog and Alpha and Boris. He's got all the security guys. Diddy's got kind of a fun little world he's created for himself. But Cassie has people? Cassie has people. Why wouldn't she just use Diddy's people? Anyway, Combs told Cassie to go ask her own people if it's true that she was being a bitch. He's like, you being a bitch, ask your own people. Isn't that rough? Don't you hate that? We've had that, right? When you've been in a fight with friends and then you like loop in another friend who like totally doesn't want to be involved. You're like, you were being such an asshole. Ask Steve. He and I were talking about, it's like you loop in Steve and Steve's like, what? So that's what Diddy's doing. Diddy's trying to make her feel bad by forcing her to confirm with other people that she was being a bitch. Was I being a bitch? Oh my God, you were so being a bitch. But then he says, they aren't going to lie to you because they're your people. They're going to kiss your butt. So ask KK. KK will tell you. And that was it. That was a whole bunch of text messages that were shared with the jury. And now we get DHS, Department of Homeland Security Agent Joe, I'm going to say Circiello. It's Joseph Cerciello. Now, what he's going to do is he's going to create a whole timeline and do the forensic breakdown of all of those text messages that we just heard from. He's going to show the times. He's got charts. He's got all of that kind of stuff. It says here, Cerciello is reviewing charts of evidence compiled by the prosecutors to confirm the information in the charts. Of course, see what I mean, folks? All right. No. The jury also saw messages here from Combs that he sent to Jane, telling her to send $1,100 to Cowboys for Angels, an escort service for flights and an overnight rate. All right, so this is another big thing that they're putting in here, because now they are demonstrating that he got prostitutes, illegal prostitutes, and then booked them air travel and flew them across state line. I mean, this is all the stuff that builds up into a federal case. So although there isn't anything glaring here, these are the kinds of things that make me think that the prosecution is not completely written off in this case. I had been pretty sure that Diddy was going to walk, but the more of this kind of stuff that we see, because this is right here, they are testifying here in court that he paid for sex, illegal sex, and then transported them across state lines for illicit purposes. Sex trafficking, that's unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't know what the wording would be here, I don't think that's the popular perception when we hear about somebody going to jail for sex trafficking. We think of much darker, much more frightening scenarios of shipping containers and dead teenage girls in them, right? That these are the horrible realities of this nasty world. And when sex trafficking is mentioned, I think what most of us think of, what we don't think of, and what I don't think we all agree should land somebody in prison for life, is sex trafficking of the variety where a billionaire celebrity flies a whore from Miami to New York. That's not the same thing, man. It's not. I know it might fit in the same box, and you might, because of the rule of law, be able to get a conviction here, but it's not the same thing. And we all know it. Diddy's a jerk. Diddy's a loudmouth. He's an entitled hip-hop guy. Thinks he's better than you. And he might be. He might be a genius. I don't know. But this is how the prosecution can build a convictable case. This is the kind of stuff they need to do. All right, so they showed text. The agent was on the stand with his little charts. He talked about these texts between Combs and the escort service Cowboys for Angels. Records in the summary chart reflect that Jane and Combs stayed at the London Hotel in Los Angeles in April of 2023. Text between Combs and a, quote, entertainer documented in the chart suggests the entertainer joined them at the hotel. So there are text messages between Diddy and some prostitute. Now I ask you, did the prostitute know she was talking to Diddy? Like, no, right? Like, Diddy's not like, hey, it's Puff Daddy, or maybe you know me as Diddy. He's not doing that. He's just another John. He's just another, okay. Must be fun for the prostitutes when they realize it's Diddy, right? They're like, oh my God, all right. I'm glad I came into work today. Text between Combs and the entertainer documented in the chart suggests that the entertainer was hired for a stay at that hotel. The report in part said the room towels, oh God, this is, all right, this is, apparently they did some damage to the hotel room, $1,800 in damage. All right, never mind. That's it, guys. That was all for Agent Joe Cerciello. That's what we'll call him, Agent Joe. That was all for him. He was done. And then at this point, I think that, Judge Arab Subramaniam, I think that, he was putting sunscreen on. He was, doing his arms. He's like, all right, we're going to wrap up for the day. I'm going to head out. Got a jet ski there out in, I don't know, where would he be? Fire Island. Let's say he's, yes. All right, guys, that's it. You have a great weekend. We're going to come back on Monday. We're wrapping this thing up. This thing is getting exciting. This thing is... So on Monday, here's what we're thinking. On Monday, the prosecution is probably going to wrap everything up, which means we should have the start of the defense on Tuesday. The defense says that they need about 5-6 days, so let's call it 7. So, yeah, this trial is not going to be sent to the jury before 4th of July, which I think is for the best if we want the jury to actually be considered, in the way that we'd like. Although, I don't know, man. I don't know how much time they're going to need. Quite frankly, at this point, I don't think I would need all that much time. All right, thank you, folks. Once again, I am Pugs Moran. This is Diddy or Didn't He, here and every night that the Diddy trial is in session on Radio Misfits, radiomisfits.com.